My teams in 10 months did 900% more projects than any given years in the past 30 years. Our revenues increased 156%. EBITDA margins increased 29%. And it grew even after, all because of back office teams doing more projects. So people go, well, what does that look like? Well, as an example, this company was losing out on tons of revenue because their contracts kept on expiring. And the clients would kick them out of their workplace saying, hey, your contract expired.
Before we start today's episode, I want to address a common challenge I have observed with FP&A professionals. While Excel skills are abundant, many are not fully tapping into Power BI's capabilities to enhance their financial analysis skills. With over a decade of experience in FP&A consulting and countless training sessions conducted, my most loved training by FP&A professionals, hands down, has been my Introduction to Power BI for Financial Analysts. So, for my loyal podcast listeners, I am giving you free access to it today. Check out the link in the description below to upgrade your FP&A skills today. Thank you. Hi, I'd like to introduce Daniel Paik today. We are going to talk about prioritizing what truly matters in FP&A from Daniel's perspective. Daniel is a prior CFO who is now a founder of CuroWork, which is a consulting company which basically helps back office functions optimize and improve their performance based on their unique techniques, which Daniel and his team helps you work through in terms of process and technology. So actually, first question for you, Daniel, from a CFO to a founder, I think a lot of people will be very curious of what made you take the plunge from traditional FP&A and finance into becoming a founder and launch your own consulting business. How difficult is it? How did that come about? What's your thought processes behind that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast here. So I appreciate that. It's a great question. What led me to launch CuroWork? It's not really a consulting firm. It's more B2B SaaS software with some help in the consulting side or more advisory on how to change the mindset of back office teams to be more, I guess, modernized with AI and all these things happening. How do we become more and more productive? So one word, pain. I've been in corporate finance accounting for 20 years. I started as an accountant. I worked my way up all the way to a CFO. And, throughout those years, many of us probably can relate to it, is that we work, we're so busy at work. We're called the back office for a reason, end of the line. And so we see everything in front of us and all of the support that we have to give, all the issues that happen every day, along with the tasks that we have to do every day, the business continuity, recurring tasks that we have to do. So I've been working many, many hours. I remember spending in one of the companies I worked at for the first 7 out of 12 years. I was working 12 to 16 hours a day, 6-7 days a week. There's just so much to do. And it's a great learning, loved being at the company. But at the end of the day, back office people, we don't get credit for most of the things we do. Right? They don't see the value of all the great things that we help with and fix and things like that. And in a way, I call ourselves second-class citizens. The things that we do are discounted. And a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different experiences. But I remember one time the CEO told me, hey, Daniel, why can't your teams get your projects done? I was like, wow, I need more people. We don't have enough time. He goes, Daniel, you guys are back office. You guys are admins. Your job is easy. You just need to get it done. And I was not happy, obviously. But I got to thinking, I said, why are they assuming that we're doing easy work? And my conclusion was, at the end of the day, we were not back office. We don't show the value that we bring. It's almost an excuse. I don't want to say it's an excuse, but we don't have a system or a standard or a current practice where we say, this is how we're going to work. This is how we're going to, these are the must-do activities to keep the business running. These are the improvement things we have to do. These are the strategic things we have to do. We don't have like a monthly report. So I know I'm talking a lot here, but I'll bring it home here for this question. Other departments like sales, operations, engineering, customer service, they have monthly reports on the work that they have done that month, right? This is what we did. This is what we thought we are going to do. This is where we are now, whether it's above that or below the line. Whether that's sales or whether that's execution, Did we meet the scheduling? Did we miss 5% of the scheduling this month? Last month was 10, so we did better. But back office, we have no monthly reports. We do financial reports, but we don't have any reports on what we're accountable for and what we should be working toward, what strategic initiatives that we should be working on. So I was just at a CFO, I'm part of CFO Alliance, and a great group of people. And we all agreed that if we asked a senior accountant or an accountant, hey, what are the strategic initiatives of this company? We all said no, but they would never know. No one even knows. So we're not even aligned with the business objectives. And because of that, we're always sort of discounted and we sort of blame the other side, but really it's upon us to show the value that we bring, right? And so how do we do that? And that's the whole reason why and the genesis of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to help back office teams help themselves standardize the way they work to show the value that they bring.
So when did you exactly have that aha moment, right? When a specific moment when you realize that back office teams need to move away, because I know you guys do not only just finance, but you do HR and other functions as well. So when did you exactly get that aha moment, which basically led you to realize that back office teams need to move away and find a new way to work, which helps them justify their existence and actually be more aligned to the strategic objectives? Because as you just said, right, a chief accountant will not even know the company's strategic objectives. Now, that is absolutely not acceptable. I mean, I've been in FP&A all my life. I know I would always know the objectives of the business. So, how can the accountant be more aware of the strategic objectives? That's one part of the question. Second is basically, is it him who is not interested, or is the company not you know, publicizing it enough as well, right? Because a lot of people will turn around and say, yeah, but we were never told, nobody's ever, when we ask these kind of questions, people, nobody ever shares with us and things like that. So there are two elements to this conversation, which I think I'd like you to share your experience on both of them, to be fair.
Yeah. I have my opinions on the topic. It may not always be right, but my general opinion, the reason why, back office teams don't really understand or know or may seem like they don't care about strategy or the strategic initiatives of the company of how they're going to grow. My opinion, I always default to leadership. I always pin it on leadership. At the end of the day, it's about the structure that they put in, it's the culture that they create. And if your teams don't know, well, who is the person that is responsible? Leadership. So I always say that your team is reflective, it's a reflection of leadership, right? So if your team knows, your leadership is doing a great job. If your team doesn't know, well, your leadership, that's not a priority for them. But if they're, wanting them to know and unhappy with their teams, instead of blaming the teams, they should point the finger around and then point it back at them, because really it's a structure. So I figured that was the issue, right? The aha moment for me was, I mean, I told you the story already. There were so many other stories, right? But there was another incident, I guess. One of the other, it was all. It's not like a one aha moment. There was one, but it's a little bit different. So I'll share with you another story and then that aha moment. So I was in a strategy meeting with finance, not with sales, operations, engineering, etc. And we're talking about how do we improve sales, how do we improve operations, how do we improve customer service, how do we improve engineering, etc. And then they came to me and they said, "Hey Daniel, how do we reduce your teams?" And I was like, "Wait a second, why aren't we talking about improving our teams? That's weird." But at that moment, it was so natural because we're always talking about reducing cost centers. We got to reduce costs, reduce costs. So it just seemed to me, oh, that makes sense. But after thinking about it, I said, that doesn't make sense. Why are we not trying to improve back office teams to help grow the business? I was like, wait a second, what are we doing to help grow the business? So even as a CFO, it took me a long time in my career to learn that it seems so simple, and it's almost embarrassing to say this, is that the business is here. Leaders in business, the primary goal is to grow the business, right? If you're not growing, you're dying, right? Whether slowly or fast, right? Or quickly. But the thing is, as a finance accounting person, I never thought about like my job needs to be focused on growing the company. It was never in my mind that I should be the one owning part of that. And so I felt my entire career, not my entire career, but a big part of my career, we were always at odds against the business, right? I'm protecting my accountants, my FP&A guys, my HR people, because the business is saying, hey, how come you're not doing this? How come you're not? I need this report. I need this thing's going wrong. My client's not happy. Help me collect. And we're just running around all day. And I'm trying to mitigate the amount of ad hoc or fires that they had to put out, trying to prioritize it, but I just don't know 90% of what's happening. And so every day is chaos, right? So I can't, I don't even have time to think about how do we help grow the company. And so all that equates down to, Daniel, how do we reduce your teams? You guys are just costing money because we're not showing the value creation that we can actually show, right?
Yeah, that's
And
entirely up to us as well, right? So that's not just to blame the business. That's just because of how we also do our job as support functions, isn't it?
right. So we see ourselves as support functions, right? I came from an operational excellence background. I was never a consultant there, but I worked in a company for 12 years, 12 and a half years. And that's how I kind of thought of all these things where back off operational excellence, the foundation is you have to measure to improve, right? But to measure, you have to have data, right? So the thing was, why can't back office improve from getting out of being a cost center or a second class citizen to a first class citizen, profit center, or a value creator? Why? Because we don't have data. We don't collect data. We don't have a standardized way to work. So in operational excellence, we understand that standardization increases efficiency. So if you're building a widget, you know, there's 30 things that you have to do in this process, and the fastest you can do it, the best standardized method you can do that with, the faster you get that widget built, the least time it takes from people, hopefully less quality issues, etc. So, but there's a standardized method to mitigate all those risks, right? But in back office, we don't have standards of working. Everybody does their own thing. So I say this to people as a salesperson comes in, first like week or a month, you're trained on how to sell this product. You're trained on what to say. You're trained on what your expectations are, the metrics you're going to be held accountable for. And every week or month, they look at your numbers. Did you do what you say you're going to do or what we want you to do? But when back office comes in, most of us, they just go help. They just throw us in and be like, fix this, help us with these things. You're hired to do these things and you have to figure it out as you go. And no wonder it takes 6 to 9 months for anybody to feel comfortable or familiar. Oh my gosh, after 9 months, you go, this is my job, right? Because we don't have a standard way to even onboard people for the job that they're being hired for. Why? Because we don't have data into what the other person did. So the aha moment actually comes back to your question. I was thinking for literally since 2014 to 2020, 2022 actually, so 8 years, like what is the measure of success for back office? What is that standard that we can base our measurement off of? Because we do so many things in back office. It's not like we're not accountable for sales is easy, right? Revenue or conversion rate or whatever it is. So there's a few things that you just look at, but what is back office measured on? And what do we say when somebody quits? We say, write down everything you do before you leave. That tells me two things. One, we don't know what they did before while they're working. We have no data. And then the second thing is that is actually the measure of success, right? That's their job that they're accountable for. The recurring work portion is the baseline measure of what people should be measured on because the recurring work is the business continuity tasks that you have to do to keep the business running as of today's status quo. Like you have to do tax, you have to do accounting, month end close, you have to do payroll. Those are cost generating activities. They don't create money, but you have to do it to keep the business running. So you can actually measure it because it's recurring, right? It takes me out of 52 weeks, it's every other week, 26 times, 3 hours a time I do it. Now you have utilization. So if you do that for every recurring work, you can actually baseline how much utilization you're spending on recurring activities, which is the cost center activities, the cost generating activities. So now
But
you
they're
have
not
free capacity.
all generating activities. I almost feel like even that is a business enabling activity because exactly as you said, right? You need to do those activities to keep the doors open. Otherwise, if you don't file your VAT, you don't do your audit, you don't do your corporation tax and things like that, the business will be shut down.
Right.
Yes, they are costs, but They help you create an environment in which your business can exist. So if you don't have that activity, the business will, sorry, but goddamn not exist, right? It
Yeah.
will shut down.
So
So
it's the most important activity for back office
I
people, right?
understand. In my
Right? It's
mind, it
the
is always
it's the number one, because if you can't go, hey, so busy this week, can't do payroll. And you're gonna be like, no, Daniel, whatever you do, you better do payroll. It's that important. So it is the baseline measure, because that's the number one, the primary activities that we have to do to keep the business running. Right? That's our number one goal, actually. The interesting thing about business is that if you look at the other side, if you look at business leaders, like I said, business is around because the leaders in businesses, their primary goal is to grow the business. Growing the business, we call it strategic initiatives. Strategic initiatives turns to a portfolio of projects. Portfolio of projects turns into a project. So if you look at that, then all business leaders want projects done. No wonder there's 2,000 plus project management systems in the world, says ChatGPT. But the problem is the execution of those projects, the people that execute on them, primarily for internal projects, are back office people. But we just discussed that the primary goal for back office people is not projects, it's recurring work. So there's already a misalignment. And then now the question is, what's the second most important thing that back office people do? Not projects. Guess what it is? It's ad hoc work. All the fire drills, all the issues that you have to do, all the supporting functions that you're constantly inundated with every single day. And we call it fires for a reason, because we've got to put it out now. Or so we think. We don't even know if it's a priority or not. We just it comes our way and we just put it out. Right. And sometimes it's easy because it comes all the time. So we're like, I don't want to do this project because it's new. It's a headache. I don't want to think about it. So they'd rather put out fires, in a sense. But not just that, but because people are asking them to. So the first two objectives for back office, not projects. The last objective actually is then projects, and therefore always delayed or never gets done.
yes,
So we're
agreed.
misaligned with business strategy, and therefore we're not even told what the strategy is, because we can barely even have time to actually execute on it. So it's not even in the minds of CFOs half the time. I mean, I've spoken to 500 plus CFOs in the past year and a half, and although we nowadays, because of AI, we're talking more like strategic CFO, but we still don't understand what that means. People go, well, how do I? They ask me, I want to be a strategic CFO, but how do I do that? They have to like swallow their pride to ask me that, because I mean, I'll tell you, I didn't know either until I started doing all these things. The question is, what is strategy, right? And people are scared to answer me. And I'll tell you, I went to UCLA Anderson and for my MBA, and I went to a strategy class. And the first question I think it was asked, there was I think 100 people in the classroom, like 107. And then the professor goes, "All right, we're going to give one word answers. I'm going to ask you a question, one word answers. What is strategy?" And they went through every single person, and there was literally 107 answers for strategy. So it's like we're all sort of confused on what strategy is. But in my opinion, it's actually very simple in business. Strategy in business is anything, any activity, any task that helps grow the business. Simple. Anything that you do. So what does that actually mean in practical terms? Well, it's not payroll, because payroll doesn't help grow the business. So it's not recurring work. So we can take recurring work and put it aside. That's just business continuity. It doesn't help grow the business. It's not strategy. Strategy then, if it's not recurring, then it's non-recurring, which means it's new, right? It's something that we're not going to do something to hurt the business, so it's going to help grow the business. So it's basically boils down to a project. That's why business leaders want projects done, because projects are new, they're collaborative, they're supposed to sustainably fix things, or if you want to expand to EMEA, like it's all about growth, something new to help the business do something better or grow the business. So really, if you want back office teams, or any teams for that matter, to help the business, they should be working on projects. They should be putting time to projects. So my big aha or big thing that we're trying to do here is our back office teams have so much potential. Why? Because we feel so much pain every single day because all of the issues that we see in the company that we work at. That actually means you probably know the answer to fix it. right? Like if you ask people, if you could do anything, what would you do to help yourself in this job that you have? And they'll say, oh my gosh, if this happened, if we did this, if we put this in place, so we have all of the expertise most of the time inside of your company now, in the people that you have. The problem is we don't have time, right? Time is the constraint. So what I did, and I'm talking a lot here, I apologize. What we realized was the world is really good at managing tasks, managing projects, managing strategy, right? They have these systems everywhere, managing these activities. But what we don't manage well, almost at all in back office, is the constraint, which is time. Why tasks don't get done, or goals don't get done, or strategy doesn't get done? It's an issue of time. So if we can get time, if you start managing time, it's the forcing function for prioritization. But if you're only managing tasks, there's millions of tasks. So how are you going to prioritize properly? Whatever we think of that time, without really just whatever just comes our way. But if we go,
Oh,
this is, yeah,
yeah, no, I agree. This brings me back to my days, right, when I was working in GL Care, Vodafone, and stuff like that. I used to always say that out of 100% of my time, I want to dedicate 30% or 40% maximum on repetitive tasks, automate as much as I can, and otherwise less than 20-30% I want to do on automated repetitive tasks, so that then I have got a free capacity of 60-70% to now do more interesting work, what I used to back in the day call interesting work, which is improving things and in creating new ways of working and stuff like that.
right.
No,
Which
I
is
completely
strategy.
agree. Yeah, which I completely agree. And then that is what always got me rewarded, because people are like, this guy does something different. But yeah, I did not think of it the way you are thinking about it. So you helped me reframe how I pitch this as well. But yeah, I mean, that is the way to think about it, right? I mean, you minimize what is repetitive every month, so that you have chance to do more innovative work. Otherwise, you're doing repetitive work. It's not very,
Right.
it's not even fun, is it? I mean, to be honest, it's not even fun.
And that's why when I was at the CFO Alliance kind of dinner last night with, 12 to 15 CFOs, one of the main topics was the lack of talent, right? People don't want to go into accounting and finance anymore because they think it's really hard. They look at the CFO role and go, oh my gosh, I don't want that stress. A lot of our CFOs are very tactical, even because we came from being an accountant, FP&A. We're like a workhorse, just churning out reports and helping fix things constantly. We're not very strategic. I don't want to diminish anybody's what they do now, and I'm sure there are a lot of good strategic CFOs, but a lot of the CFOs that I meet, even directors of finance, they don't have time for strategy, or they were never even trained to be strategic, to have a strategic mindset. And therefore, they ask me, Daniel, on the side, they go, what does that mean? How do I become strategic? And when I go, it's really projects. If you're going to spend 20% of your time of your whole entire team, and let's say every single month, your whole entire team spends carved out 20% of the time into do these projects that you have that's been sitting there sometimes for 10 years, that I find, imagine how much faster your company could grow, because those projects it's all about productivity. It's going to mitigate or save time for not just you, but for sales, for ops, for engineering, for whoever. They're going to be better customer service. They're going to be more time to sell, right? There's going to be less issues with development. All a function of time, right? It's really, really understanding that. There is a thing, though. The question is, well, it sounds great, Daniel, but how the heck do I do that? So there is some manual work, but the funny thing is we're already doing it, but we're not doing it in a standard way. So we do have to understand what people are working on. So we have to understand the capacity. So they have to put in like, this is what I did, this is how much time I took. So you can now group it and say, these are recurring, ad hoc, growth. So you can understand that you have to have the data. The number one thing I get and the pushback I get is no one's going to want to do that. No one wants to put in a timesheet. Well, it's not generally a timesheet. It is a task, how much time tasks take. So you can look at it as a timesheet or not, but we're already doing that. People write down tasks in their notebook or their paper notebook still. People use like Asana, people use their calendar. So you're already doing it to a certain degree, but they're all disjointed and they're everywhere. And they're in like 3, 4 systems and even on like post-it notes. So if we can get all of your tasks that you're doing in one place, then you can actually have reporting. something that back office never had, right? We can actually report.
So that is what it is, right? So back office is never basically, because the reason why people are doing it on post-its or on basically, Excel and whatever else, is because of the fact that they've never thought about it, that they need to gather this data and organize this data. But now what you brought around with CuroWork is basically, if you bring this data together, it gives you insights which help you make that decision of how much of the time is actually being dedicated to growth work versus repetitive work versus ad hoc
Ad hoc. Yep. Exactly.
firefighting work and things like that. I mean, and again, it's just, I don't know. I agree with you completely. There is a whole shift in the frame of mind. I think it all begins in the mind. So if you change the shift in the mind first, then I think everything else starts falling in place. I'd like you to share with us the some of the stats you talked to me previously about, right? Of when you as a CFO made this change with your team. In that particular year, your team achieved some phenomenal results. I still can't get over those numbers, to be honest. So if you
Yeah.
could share those numbers with us, I'd be really appreciative of that.
Yeah, it's thank you for asking the question. You did hit something on the head, nail on the head. It is a mind shift change. We in the back office are stuck in prehistoric times, I feel like. We don't have everybody has a standard of working. Sales has Salesforce, they have a system of record, right? Zendesk is for customer service, they have a system of record. Back office has no system of record. We don't have data, so we're creating that system of record so that you have data to be like first class citizens, as an example. And if you do that, so I ran a proof of concept for 10 months after I realized this. Oh my gosh, it's just about data and where we spend our time. So I put a spreadsheet together and I managed these teams. 4 hours, it took me 4 hours a day to do it manually. It could be done manually, but it just takes so much time. And I kid you not, my teams in 10 months did 900% more projects than any given years in the past 30 years. Our revenues increased 156%. EBITDA margins increased 29%. And it grew even after, all because of back office teams doing more projects. So the people go, well, what does that look like? Well, as an example, this company was losing out on tons of revenue because their contracts kept on expiring. And the clients would kick them out of their workplace saying, hey, your contract expired. We can't work with you until they're re-signed. But these companies are, Fortune 500 companies. It takes a while to get re-signed. So it took an average of 3 months to get it re-signed. And during that 3 months, you get zero revenue from these contracts. I did some math. Every time the contract expired, it's about $100,000 to $1 million in lost revenue. This happened 10 to 15 times a year. And it was it's like, it's been happening for over a decade. It's just the way it is. I was like, wait, that cannot be the right, what is going on, right? And so, as companies grow and they grow quickly, the processes, procedures aren't there. So although they may have had a contract management system, no one owned it. No one put it in. So all the contracts were in everybody's computers. It was in different files and folders, and no one even knew what version was the latest version. So it took sometimes 2 to 3 weeks just to find the latest version, let alone go back to the client and say, hey, let's go back to the table and renegotiate this thing. So the issue was a standardized contract process, right? Someone to manage it. So I found, per what I'm doing, I found my 2 accountants that I freed up 30 hours of their month each month. So we had 60 hours a month. And I said, hey, any free time you have, it looks like you have about 30 hours each. Fix this. Whatever you have to do, make sure we don't miss contracts again. In about a month and a half, 0 contracts were missed. Right?
Wow.
Because they just put in they took all the contracts, put it in one place. They created a spreadsheet. They put all of the main items in there that we need to keep track of. And there were some formulas that showed, hey, this is going to expire in 3 months. And so let's start negotiating before it expires. It seems so simple, right? But it's so prevalent in companies as they grow because they don't know that they're bleeding cash because they don't see it directly. They just see, it's another fire, let's just fix it. No one owns it, right? And also because they don't have time to fix it. So that's just one out of so many examples. It's not even that, it's not hard. It's just finding time to sustainably fix things in your face that you've been doing for years.
It's like looking at the wood from the trees, right? And you have to, the minute you are able to raise yourself above, even for 30 hours a month, you say, okay, now how can I do this better? And then suddenly your way of thinking just changes. I mean, that is critical, right? I mean, that is the only way forward, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to, that is absolutely critical way of working. So
And just one thing I'll add here is it's two things actually. One is time, right? But what are you going to do with that time? So you have to show ROI or with a value creation. So the reason why I could say we believe we brought in 150 or we increased revenue by 156%, et cetera, is because I could actually tie it back to these projects that we did. And we say, we would, on average, I think we saved here 4 to 10 million. Let's just call it 5 or 6. On this one, seems like we made, or not say we made $4 to $10 million. This one we made 2 million. This one 1.2. If you all add that up, it was actually very interesting. I was like, oh my gosh, we beat budget by X dollars, and it almost is 1 to 1 with the projects that we did. Unbelievable. And so when I found that out, I was like, numbers don't lie. It's black and white. I know what my teams did. They're capable. They have so much potential. We just don't have the right structure and visibility. We don't zero visibility in what they do. But when everything's visible, you realize, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Why are we doing on those? What are we spending time there? I mean, my teammates say, I don't even know why we're doing this. I'm like, why are you doing this? I don't know. I've been doing it for 5 years. It's like, oh my gosh. So you just have discussions. You start eliminating things that just non-value add and free up time to do the important things.
if I had a pound for every time somebody told me, but this is how we always do things, I'd be a millionaire now. I honestly think I'd be a millionaire. People just, it becomes acceptable that because we've always done it like that, that is the only way to do things. If that is the way mankind evolved, I think we would still be living in caves and we'll be, wearing, I don't know, animal skin because we've always done it that way.
Right.
That's luckily we don't, a lot of the humans don't live like that. So yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't work. I really, really actually see where you are going with that. But then how does CuroWork as a solution help with this? Sorry, I mean, I'm going off script a little bit, but I'm now really, really curious because how does then CuroWork play a role in this conversation? Does it help you track what you are doing, or what does it mean?
Yeah. So what we do is we're the system of record, which means that we're the foundational data layer for back office teams. So as a quick example, the first thing we do with clients is we transform your job description into job deliverables. So we ask, hey, your recurring work, what do you deliver? What is a deliverable, right? It's payroll, right? Or if you just say month and close, that's not a deliverable. No, I do bank reconciliations. I do 5 bank reconciliations. These are the 5, right? It takes me X number of days and X number of hours on average. So we can understand in general, 80% accurate about how much time it takes to do your recurring work. And we find that on average, back office teams, they spend 90% to 140% on recurring work alone.
Absolutely agree. I have delivered 3 centers of excellence for 3 different businesses. And I can tell you, every time we have had to deliver one, we have to first take a documentation of what is the existing as in process exactly. So, how many bank reconciliations, how many invoices, how many chasing up, credit control, blah, 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 and who does it, what is the time taken for it, all of that, so that you bring it all together and then say, okay, now how can I optimize this as a center of excellence and things like that. And every time I have done that, I'm like, your entire day is filled with stuff. You find people fill their time, if that almost makes sense. So, because they don't have a larger vision, okay, again, sorry if I'm saying something and if I upset somebody out loud, but the reality is because leadership has failed to inspire people to have a bigger vision, but people know they have to be in the office for 40 hours a week, they will fill up the 40 hours with something because they have to justify their existence, right? Whereas if the leadership comes down to them and says, okay, I am going to now inspire you and say that you need to help me grow this business, exactly what you say, right? Help me with this strategy, help me to grow this business. If you as leadership are able to do that, then suddenly all, what did you say, 90 to 140% filled up with recurring tasks becomes 30% of recurring tasks, and they have freed up all this time. How? by magic.
But the whole thing I have to say is, and this is what you said is like spot on. There's an addition to that though. You have to not just inspire, but you have to show data. Without data, it's just ideas and words. And then it sounds great. And everybody goes, yeah, we want to be more strategic, but what does that actually mean? Well, this is where we are, right? We look 90% of our time is recurring. We're not helping the business grow. This is what we want you to look like. We want you to work 30% on the recurring and 70% on growth. Or maybe it's 30% on recurring, 20% on ad hoc because they never stop, and then 50% on growth. So that's the goal, guys. And once you have that data and as you start working, you go, how the heck do I get there? Oh, I could trim here, trim here. If we automate that, then I could trim here as well. And we can outsource that thing. Then I could spend most of my time doing all these projects. And by the way, well, which one do I do first? We need to look at ROI of these projects, right? And say which one's the top ones that we should do. So there's so much. So our system does all of that, or we're trying to build, or in the middle of building some of that as well. But it's really about data, visualization, complete visualization of an individual's work and a team's work, and then what the goals are and keeping people accountable, right? And it's amazing what we have found. So we have like an automated one-on-one function. So since you have all your data in there, we know next week you're already 52 hours utilized, right? You're already over 100%. So now I can't say as a manager, hey, can you get this project done? Which will always say, okay, get this done, and they never get it done. Well, guess why? It's 52 hours of work. So now it's on us, me as a manager, to say, is that good? Should I take some things away? Should I delegate? Should I eliminate some things? So as you can now work on exact tasks and agree. And we have a budgeting function, and we call it lock-in, where you lock in your one-on-one. So you go, okay, you're 52 hours, let's lock it in. As you start working, you can manage by variance. This unplanned work came in, an extra 4 hours. So now you see that, Daniel has 52 hours plus a 4-hour task came in from the CEO. Now, as a manager, you can say, hey, Daniel, don't do that 4-hour thing, whatever that is. Let me talk to the CEO, see if I can get that off your plate. So now the manager is no longer micromanaging, right? No longer saying, where's this, where's that? How come you didn't do that? They're saying, no, let me help you with that. Let me try to take that off. So trust increases. People are less stressed, right? There's a single source of truth. It just almost like magic.
It is. It absolutely is. I can completely see what you're talking about as well, right? I mean, when I was doing my head of FP&A role as well, I had this rule for my team. Anything that takes you more than half an hour or 45 minutes, let's talk about it in the team meeting. Because if something is taking you 3 or 5 hours, right, it's done wrong. In my world, even today, I stand by it. Yes, the month end takes days. I get it. But exactly as you say, month end is not a task, right?
Right.
Bank reconciliation is a task. Payroll is a task. Blah, blah, blah. Accrual booking is a task. Prepayment transfer is a task. Each of them shouldn't take you more than half an hour or 45 minutes. If it does, come and talk to me. Let's figure this out. How does it take you longer than that? What can we automate? What can we, get rid of? And things like that. That's
Right.
the way. Until leaders start thinking like that, you are going to struggle. And the other point that you just made about basically, going and helping the CFO, the manager helping out if you get a task from a CEO. I had an exactly similar experience. I have to share this and I have to give credit to the
Please.
people. My GM at the time, my EMEA GM. We were short of 2 people in the team. I was covering for 3. So I was basically doing 3 roles because my colleague and my manager were out. So I was covering for all of them. And then the global CFO came down and asked me for something else. I lost my marbles. I'm like, what I can't do this. Are you nuts? I'm like trying to keep this boat afloat to begin with. You can't ask me for more. I completely lost it. I went to my GM and I said, you know what? Sorry, mate, I need help. I am not going to be able to do this. But that guy is a global CFO. I am getting fired if I tell him no. I cannot do that. This is honest answer. His words were, Tejas, this is why they pay me the big money, to protect you and help you do your job. Okay. So you go out, do your job, leave this. The global CFO will not come back to you for 1 month. Okay. Till all your colleagues are back, he will not come back. Once they are back, you can deliver this, whatever he's asked for after. And I'm happy to deliver. I know how to do it. I just physically don't have hours in the day.
Right. So
exactly as you said, right?
So that is a story like I think almost everyone can relate to, because I think back office people, we're smart people, right? We do a lot of work, at least most of us. And we don't complain, most of us, because we know what needs to be done. We know we can do it. So we work so hard, and then it's only when something like that happens, unfortunately, we wait till the end where we just had it, and then we say something, right? That's how finance account people generally how we are, which is so unfortunate because then you're already burnt out, right? You already have some, you're not mentally all there. You're maybe depressed or whatever it may be because you're not being valued. So the reason why we have to change this mindset is not just, oh, let's be more productive. No, it's actually to help people, right, live life in a better way with less stress, more freedom, more creativity, instead of just constantly being bogged down every day. I hate going to work. I hate going to work. Like, that's not healthy for anybody. So if he had data, that global CFO would be like, oh my gosh, you have 64 hours this week. I can't add this extra thing. Or you can say, hey, global CFO, which ones do you not want me to do? Because this is what my plate looks like. Then they will go, I have seen this happen where CEOs, the reason why they were late with month end close was he gave so much ad hoc work in our system, and they tracked it and they said, hey, it goes, why are you late on your financials again? It's like, well, shows here that you gave my team like 4 things to do in the middle of month end close. It took them like 8 hours to do this thing, and they're late for a few days because of this. And when he saw the data, he goes, oh my, that's not even that important. I will never do this again. I will actually do it after. I never knew that this was the reason why. And so once they have data, people just change their mind. They go, oh, okay. Well, then they make a decision. They can now make a decision whether or not they want it or not, right?
Yeah. Daniel, exactly what you say, right? Data helps you make better decisions. One of my ex-managers used to tell me, he used to always say, what gets measured gets managed. If you don't measure,
Yeah.
you can't manage.
Well,
So you
can I
measure.
correct that? I correct this all the time. I apologize. It's actually a misquote. It's never measured to manage. It's actually measured to improve. So it's a quote from Peter Drucker. His exact quote is, if you can't measure, you can't improve. Because the other way, if you can't measure, you can't manage, it actually doesn't make sense practically, because we do things and manage things without ever measuring, right? We drive our car and we don't measure what we do. We manage it, we drive it. But so in the practicality, it's not that. It's actually, his main point was, if you want to improve, you have to measure. If you don't measure, you have no idea if you improved or not.
Yeah, well, in my mind, when I was saying manage, I was thinking in my mind to improve it, but yeah, I get it. I mean,
yes, exactly.
You can reword it as, okay, you can, if you measure, then only can you improve. Yeah, but that's the point, right? If you measure, then you can improve. Otherwise, you can't really improve. So that's the purpose of
100%.
this whole thing, right? I mean, that's this takes us. So
100%.
no, definitely. So before we go to the 3 standard questions, I have to ask you this one, right? So redefining success. How do finance leaders measure their impact today? Not just by budgets and stuff like that, or exactly as you said, right? Not by being a cost center that I have got these many heads, or that's the cost of finance, or that's the cost of HR, or things like that, but actually by business outcomes. So if you can give us one tangible example or a story of how a finance leader has been able to measure their impact based on business outcomes.
Yeah. So this day and age, with AI, with all this automation that's going to happen to a certain degree, it's becoming more and more important. I mean, actually urgent and necessary for not just finance leaders, accounting, back office, but the whole entire team to think strategically, which means put more time into efforts that impact business growth.
Okay.
Right. So we need to put more and more time as AI and automation takes more and more of the recurring redundant work, and your time just automatically gets freed up. We need to be already thinking and training and upskilling ourselves, doing projects to help businesses grow. Right.
Okay.
So to me, I mean, the things I've been talking about before, how do you impact business growth? I mean, it's very simple to me. I think we try to make it very, very, people call it strategic initiatives, and half the people, in back office are like, ooh, I don't even know what strategic initiatives really mean, and they get scared about it. It's like, no, it's very simple. Just do more projects. It's really just, how do we really affect change? Do the highest ROI project that you have on your list, measure it, show the impact, it doesn't have to be 100% correct, right? How do you measure fixing the contract management system? Well, you do some back calculations, you see what the loss is. If you fixed it, this is what it generally would look like. So we might make $5 million more this year. Well, that's the impact. So that's probably number one on your list. What's the second one? So as you start measuring, which is very important, if you have data, you have to have data to measure. And then you have to figure out when you actually finished it, did it actually do what it did? Right? So I think finance leaders, CFOs, we need to think more business impact strategic. How do I get myself and my teams to grow and show the impact? The showing part is the important part. So, I mean, I could give you tons of examples, right? So, even like scheduling, like we had a scheduling issue with one of our clients. They were missing 15%, 20% of their scheduling. Unbelievable, right? All the time. It was on spreadsheets. There were different departments doing it. There was few people. There was 3 sources of truth in scheduling. And so now these people going out in the field didn't know if they were going to the right place sometimes. And sometimes they didn't even know that they were scheduled. So it seems so ridiculous, but
In
some
today's date
businesses,
and time, you can have an app for that. I mean, it takes like how easy and cheap is an app to schedule stuff on. It's
but
not
if
that.
but as I think as businesses grow and you have people who've been doing it manually and they've been there for a long time, they keep doing the same thing. And a lot of companies still manage by exception. They think the exception is the rule instead of creating a standardization. So there's just so many opportunities in companies to just easily fix certain things. Again, time. So now you can measure, well, every time we miss a schedule, how much does that cost? It's not just the revenue loss, but how much time did the scheduling person take now to fix this thing? Now operations has to redo the thing. Now sales has to redo the contracting. The customer's unhappy. So you just take one incident on average and say, this thing costs us 80 hours to fix. We only would make $10,000 on this, but it took us 80 hours to fix this. So we're at a loss. But if this doesn't happen, right, then we can make X more dollars. If we're more efficient, we can even make more. And so it's all about measurement, right, about what you do. But I think the first step is in back office, we're not yet there fully. We first have to understand what people are doing, right? Current state. What is it that everybody's doing? How do we save time so we can do those great things like fixing scheduling and contracts and whatnot?
I like to highlight one thing that you said, right? The 2 or 3 examples that you talked about CRM, contract management, you talked about CRM, you talked about scheduling solutions and things like that. Now, traditionally, well, I will say it out loud. I'm sure I'm going to upset somebody. But basically, traditionally, people would say, but that's not even a finance's job. But that's my problem statement. It is your job because ultimately it impacts your P&L and your cost in your P&L and your revenue in your P&L. And you did not become a chartered just to do data entry in a ER accounting system or in an Excel book. You
Right.
became a chartered. We are all chartered, right? There is a damn reason why we did that degree. We didn't do that because we can fill up an Excel book. My son is 14, he can fill up an Excel book. Then why the hell do you need a chartered? You need a chartered because a person thinks beyond that Excel, beyond that journal entry, and is able to, think about the business. Again, I don't need to know the coding for a CRM, but I can still be a part of that implementation project from a controlling perspective, from a segregation of duty perspective, from how do process mapping perspective, and add value from that angle. I don't need to be a coder to be in a CRM project or in a contract management solution software project. I don't know those codes, and I'm sure respectfully, but I don't think even you are a coder.
Yeah, I
So
am not.
so that's not the point, right? I mean, our skill set comes from being chartered means we come with a very clear logical train of thought, and that's our superpower which we should be bringing to the table as we go along for
Yeah,
that conversation.
100%. I'll add that the key, I would say, at a very high level is when you understand what people are doing and you realize the back office is not very strategic, you have a huge opportunity here to now be very transparent and build a culture of growth mindset. And so that means that the back office will now think like the front office, and we will all be rowing in the same direction so that when there's a contract management system or like a scheduling thing, that's not my job. It's no longer that's not my job. It's how can we help this company to grow? Well, there's a problem here that's putting growth at risk. So how can we all come together? Who are the best people to help you? And the reason why a lot of times, like you said, chartered accountants, finance people are involved in these things is because we see the numbers. We see like what happened? Why didn't you make your revenue? Oh, we have this issue with scheduling. Well, this is costing this much. Well, let's figure out, put that out there and have it visible to the group. And let's all work together and not just blame like, why are you doing this? No, no, no. Why is this happening? Who are the best people to fix this? How do we fix this? Who has time to do it? And let's get it done. So that should be the way that business works, and everybody's happy. There's no pointing fingers, right? It's just we all have one mindset to grow. Whatever we need to do to help each other to grow this company should be done.
So culture is the fertilizer which grows the mindset, which is the seed for the data to then validate what you are doing and basically help you improve as you go along. Improve the crop as you, if I want to continue the anomaly along.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's really interesting. Because even after our last call, right, what we had a chat last time, it kept playing back in my mind, and I wanted to explore that more of that in this podcast, which clearly we have today. I'm very, very happy. Now this helps me actually clear out what we were talking about from last couple of conversations as well. Now we are almost running out of time, so I am going to go back to my three standard questions. I'm sorry. Quick fire. First, where do you think is the future of FP&A in 3 to 5 years? And you're not allowed to say AI. We all know AI is coming. That's a given. Okay, so let's not worry about AI. So where do you think is the future of FP&A in 3 to 5 years? I'm not allowed to say AI.
So when you say FP&A, I'm actually including sort of back office, accountants, HR, etc. So in 3 to 5 years, without AI, what is the future? It's everything I just talked about. The future is to transform the back office from a mere, I don't want to say mere, but a cost center to a value creator, changing the mindset to value creation rather than cost generation work. I think that's the future. That it has to be. It must.
Otherwise,
If
you
we
won't have a
don't, we
job.
will die.
Yeah. Otherwise, you won't have a job, basically. So
Yeah,
go figure it out.
exactly.
What is one thing the most FP&A functions and finance functions? Okay, let me make it a bit more broad, right? FP&A and finance functions need today to help them become better strategic finance business partners.
Easy. It's data. You have to have data. That is the foundational thing that we're missing because data opens everything up.
Yeah, but I have to clarify because I think some of the audience might misunderstand. So let's just be very clear. When you are saying data, you're not talking about business data. You are talking about the data on the activities done by the support functions and finance
Correct.
functions.
Yes,
So,
where you're
so
spending your time.
So because the last time as well, when you kept saying data in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but there's already so much data in the business. Why are you saying there is no data? There is data. What you're talking specifically about is data. One thing that finance and FP&A functions need help with is documenting and understanding where they are spending their finite amount of time covering infinite amount of activities, and how are they prioritizing it and stuff like that. Because if they have that data, then they can find time to become better strategic finance business partners. Yeah, I agree.
100%. It's
I
a lot and it seems like a lot, but actually in reality, it takes 10 to 12 minutes a day. It's actually very simple. Because
yeah, but
you're not putting 1,000 tasks in, you're putting 5 to 10. Right. And if
yeah,
you
but
just put that on a daily
they
basis,
help you with that as well, which record your screen and then they tell you you spend this much time on this file, this much time on that file. All you need to do is then summarize that up, and that should be straightforward, right?
right?
So
Exactly.
for someone who is looking to move into FP&A or has just started into finance, what skills and certifications do you think they should be looking to acquire?
So my answer to that may be different than most of your prior or future guests. I always tell people coming into any profession, whether finance or otherwise, is there should be nothing beneath you. There's no work. You should never have a mindset, there's nothing beneath me. I think in life, to stand out, you have to differentiate yourself, obviously, right? And what does that mean in business practice, in anything you do, but in this professional sense? That means that when people don't want to do something because it's hard or it's mundane, even filing paperwork, no one wants to do it, you should do it. That you stand out. Raise your hand when everybody's running from it. You should run toward it. In life, when people run away from things, don't want to do things, complain about things, it's because they're hard, right? They're difficult. It's time consuming. But usually when it's hard and difficult, that's where the value is, and that's where you learn the most. And I mentor a lot of undergrads going to the workforce, and I say, hey, in my life, when I graduated college, I went in as an accountant, and I could do my job in an hour. I was so bored. And I was so bored, I went out to different places. Like, can I help you? Can I help you? One quick story is, I don't want to call him out, but I kept telling my manager, hey, can you give me more work? Like, I just got a call, I want to learn. And then he's like, hey, yeah, I'll give you more. Yeah, sure. After a couple of weeks, I was like, hey, I need more work. I can do my work in an hour. And you know what he said to me? He goes, Daniel, work slower. And I was like, what? I didn't go get a 4-year degree to work slower. What are you talking about? But anyway, so after a while, I said, hey, can I go and help other people and just go to different departments and see if they have work for me to do? And they're like, yeah. He's like, go do it.
Yeah, go on from here, basically.
So I was at a very, very large company. Like, they were doing 46 billion a quarter. And I went to the accounting department. They had rows and rows and rows. This is back in the early 2000s, and rows of filing cabinets. And they're like, yeah, we have, I don't know, Dan, I don't know if you want to do this, Daniel. We have like thousands of papers we have to file. I was like, dude, I'll just do it. I have nothing to do. Let me just do it. So I'm filing these things, and I'm figuring out the system of filing. It seems so mundane, but every audit, they told me that they're having issues finding the files. I was like, why? It's because people check things out, they don't put it back in. I was like, well, how do you check these things out? It's like, oh, it's on a spreadsheet, and then someone has to go in there, and now there's different versions of spreadsheets for different types of departments. And I'm like, what is happening? Well, initially, actually, so there was a spreadsheet, but the main thing was there was a checklist. There was a paper, so someone had to put it into the spreadsheet afterward. And I was like, this doesn't look right. This is no wonder no one's owning this. No one wants to do this. No one's actually doing it. People take papers out and never put it back. So I was able to assess that and go, wait, this is not a good process. So I didn't fix the whole thing, but I helped them streamline it. And I just learned the thing that nobody wanted to do. And as I learned that, as I went to another company, I could help them streamline other processes because I realized what the components of why something fails, right? People don't care. People don't own it. So I learned things without knowing I was learning things. People go, oh, you're just filing paperwork. But no, I learned a ton of things on how to communicate, all these things. And so I tell young people, FP&A, if you're starting, do the hard things. You're young, you have energy, your mind is soaking all these things up. Do the hard things. It will pay off dividends for the rest of your life.
No, I'm sorry we have run over, but I have to share this one thing with you. I worked with a local council in the UK as well at a point in time, very, very early on in my career. And I had a very similar experience where I was told to do things slowly because I was just working faster than 5 other people in the room. But eventually, the reason why I was able to do that is because if you take a problem statement and you break it down into its components and you optimize those components, suddenly you have optimized the whole process by a multiplier. So even if
Yes,
each component is only 10% more optimum, overall is not 100%. Overall is 1,000% because it just now fits in a little bit better and it just works beautifully. And
exactly.
that, I think people just don't understand the concept of compounding efficiency. That's a compounding efficiency conversation because each component now compounds onto the next one and things like that.
100%
Which,
agreed on that. Exactly.
I mean, it is fun, man. It is fun. For people who understand it and who get it, it is really, really just fun. No, it is a complete pleasure. I think I really, really enjoyed this conversation as I thought I would. I learned a few things, but last time I wanted to make sure I clarify for certain things in my head, which I think I have. So no, thank you so much for this time, Daniel. We really, really appreciate. I'm sure a lot of CFO and finance people will pick up, some of the tips you've given them, and might even reach out to you for more conversations on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
So
please do.
thank you so much.